Hey YouTubers, today we have a very common problem for the Bosch washing machine, front loading machine, and it's just not spinning, so we're not getting any kind of spin result. So when we set it to spin, it's drained out all the water. We're sure that there's no water left in there. We turn it on, we're asking it to spin. We can hear the drain motor fire up. We don't see any water inside. We're not getting any action from the spin basket. It's not moving at all. So this points toward some carbon brushes inside the motor that have just worn out where they can't send power anymore. So we're going to pull out the washer and the dryer together. We're just going to pull out that power cord, and I'm going to grab here and I'm going to tilt it back a little bit and lift it slightly. Don't hurt your back, use your legs, and I'm going to keep wiggling it out until I can get it out of this closet area so I can get to the back. I just got to get to the back of the washer. Got it unplugged. I'm going to use my Torx 15 driver to remove all these perimeter screws on this back panel. And behind it, you'll find the motor, and then you can remove the motor pretty easily and put in the new brushes. It's a pretty common thing that'll happen for this type of wash machine after about anywhere between 6 to 8 years, depending on how much laundry you're doing. It's kind of cool though. It allows you to fix it without replacing the motor. You just replace these little cheap brushes. So there's the motor. Next thing we're going to do is disconnect these wires. These are the wires bringing power to the motor. There's a green one, which is the ground, and then there's a big yellow modular one behind that. And that one you have to just kind of wiggle out. Be patient. It's going to take a little while to get it out. Maybe pull the bottom part of it out and then pull the top. I just got the ground one off. Now I'm pressing in on this plastic piece so I can push the wire zip tie out of there. And now I can get a little bit better purchase with my fingers to pull this thing out. There's the yellow modular piece. Be patient. That actually took a little while to get that out. So I'm going to remove these two bolts, and these are 10 millimeter. There's the 10. And just going to spin those out, and that's all that's really holding on your motor at that point. You've already disconnected the wires, you disconnected the belt, and now I'm going to pull pretty hard toward me. And take your time here. This might be in there pretty good, so grab it with both hands, pull it towards you. It'll come out of these 4 brackets holding it at the top. You already removed the screw, so it's just in there by friction. So now I'm going to get to the power connector on one of the brushes and remove the spade connector with I just use my needle nose pliers. And I just kind of pull back, wiggle, it'll come loose. And then maybe use some good reading glasses or something so you can see better, because this is kind of fidgety, tiny work. You're gonna push this brass thing out towards you so the bottom of it can come out of a slot, and then you can lift out the spring and the carbon brush. This only has about a 1/4 inch left. That's why it wasn't working. When you buy it, I think it's about 2 inches. So you can get these cheaper online too, but this is the genuine one made by Bosch, probably a better one. That's the part number. We'll put a link in the description below. Look at the difference between the worn out one and the new one. When you put the new one back into its channel, its slot, there's a certain direction. You can see that the end of it is at an angle, and you want to kind of match that angle. That's the wrong way. There's the right way. You want to match that angle so that it's going to sit right on that round surface that we saw there in the middle of the motor. So we're going to slide that down. And again, I would do this with really good lighting. I always do this outside because my eyes aren't very good. And this allows me to see the spring. I got to push the spring all the way down into its brass channel. And it's kind of hard work here. You got to be patient, take your time, use your fingers to push it in. Maybe use a screwdriver to help you get it in. And then you're going to push the back part of it through that channel, and then push the front of it through the other channel closest to you, and that'll lock it in. And then you can put the wire back on. You can put the spade connector back on. Make sure the spade connector is all the way on there as far as it'll go. See, I'm pushing behind the brass piece with my index finger as I push on the spade connector. That actually holds that whole thing in position. It's pretty cool. Some German engineering. So we'll do the other side. Just flip it over. We have to get off the old spade connector. I'm just using a pick tool to help me get it off. You can use a pair of needle nose pliers is good. And then you're going to push the back end of it out of its slot. Or I'm sorry, you have to push away from you first to get the front end of it out of its slot. You lift it up, and then you can pull the back end of it out of its slot, and then you can pull out the old one. So I'm just getting it out of the front slot closest to me. I lift it up, and I pull it out toward me to get out of the back slot, lift it out, another really tiny one. I'll put in the big one, brand new. Yeah, I'll probably get 7 to 8 years of service now for good agitation and good spin with this new carbon brush. I'm just matching, making sure I get that angle correct for that channel. And then again, just take your time here, pushing the spring the best you can with your fingers. Usually it gets caught up on the outside of that brass round housing, so you have to kind of use a screwdriver or a pick tool to push the spring way down into that brass channel, all the way down in before you attempt to put the brass top piece into its slots. Sometimes the spring will pop out. It can be frustrating, but take a deep breath, take your time, make sure you have good lighting, you can see really well. I like to use just daylight, it works really good. Then get it into its back channel, then push behind it, get the spade connector on there tight, and you're pretty much done. We just got to reassemble this thing. So we're going to put it back into position, maybe use 2 hands, and you have to fit it onto the 4 supports. There's 2 in the back, 2 in the front. It has to kind of all go on at the same time. Once you got it, just push it away from you toward the front of the washer. And then to hold it, we're just going to add in those bolts. Sometimes I'll put on that yellow connector before I mount this all the way in, because it's a little bit easier to get that yellow connector in. Push the yellow connector that brings power to the motor all the way in as far as it'll go. Get the little green ground connector back on, and then you can add those. Actually, right now I got those connectors in, but now I'm going to put the motor onto its mounting, the 4 of them, and then I'll push away from me, and then I can put on those big bolts, which are 10 millimeter. I think a 1/2 inch socket would also work. So I'm just making sure I got these connectors aren't tight, because I don't want to put this all back together and then it not have power. And that would only happen if you just didn't have the power connectors in as tight as they can go. You just got to wiggle them in. So now I'm just putting those bolts back in, and you spin them in, get them snug. I'll put the belt back on. I'll get it on its nice little grooves. I get it on the big wheel, and then once I got it lined up, I'm just going to turn that wheel to my right. It'll self-feed onto the big pulley, and then I'll try spinning it back and forth several times, just confirming that that belt is really on there correctly. We're doing good. So we're going to put this back panel back on. I'm getting it underneath the hoses, and I got to make sure the bottom of it sits down into this groove, and then I can do the fastener. See the groove here? I got to sit it down inside there, and then on the other side, same thing. Then I can put in the perimeter fasteners, get them tight, and I can take it for a test drive. It's always a satisfying thing when you fire it up. You'll notice when you fire it up, it spins great, but it's going to be a little louder for about 4 cycles as the carbon brushes break in. That's normal. Nothing's wrong with it. It'll actually get quieter the more you use it. So you got good spin function, back to normal. Thanks so